Okay, good morning. And Daf Yomi, the sponsorship is upgraded to the week. Baruch Hashem Le'ilu Nishmas. Rebecca's grandfather, Mr. Eli Yanku, Elio ben Yaakov Rivko's yahrzeit is today, the 21st of Shvat. May his neshama have an aliyah. We should learn all week in his merit, and it should be a good week of learning. We're going to go into some new topics. I think I'm mentioning people one more time today, but we're almost done. Okay. We're almost done. It's always like in passing.
It's going to go quiet.
Oh, that's correct. There you go. Okay. So, Meisvei, we are 5 lines from where the Gemara starts on Daf Chof of an Aleph. So, if you look at where the Gemara starts, you count down 5 lines. The last word on the line, Meisvei. So, we asked the following question. Really, we were discussing in the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon has this opinion. We said that if you take your kmitza and you don't put it into a kli shares, right? You take the kmitza and then you don't put it into a second utensil. So the Chum say that's not good. You have to be able to put it into a utensil. Rabbi Shimon says you do not. It's kosher. So you have 3 different opinions as to what Rabbi Shimon is holding. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, holds that you have a choice. You can either do it by hand, in which case if you do it by hand, you can do it with your right hand. And if you do it in a utensil, then even your left hand is acceptable, right? Because he relates it to kachatas ka'asham. If it's like a chatas, you're doing it with your hand, so then it has to be done with the right hand like a chatas. If it's going to be done like an asham, then it can be done in a container like an asham. Then we had Rabbi Yanai's position. Rabbi Yanai's position was, once you do the kmitza, you can just throw it on any way you want. Wrap it in a shirt, throw it in there, whatever you want to do. And even in an earthenware utensil, you don't need a second. It doesn't seem like he needs a second utensil. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak is the third opinion. He says, no, you got to put it in a second utensil. When Reb Shimon says that you can then you don't need a second utensil. He says, after you've put it in the utensil, feel free to scoop it back out and do what you want with it after that. But you got to put it in the utensil first, and then you're okay. Those are the 3 different opinions. So now we're going to ask a few questions and see if we can't prove like one opinion or the other. Meisvei. So we asked the following question: Hekter cholovim ve'ivarim ve'itzim. Right? If I've got burning, I'm going to burn the fats or the limbs or the wood. Shehelon bein biyad bein bekli, and I'm going to put it on the mizbeach, whether by hand, whether with a utensil. Bein bayamin, bein basmol, whether the right hand or the left hand. Ksherin. All of those are kosher. That's fine, because those are not services, not an issue. Hakometz, however, the kmitza, the haktores, and the incense, the halavon and the frankincense, shehelon, that you brought those on the mizbeach, bein biyad, bein bekli, you put them on with your hand or with a utensil. Bein beyamin, bein basmol, whether you do it with your right hand or with your left hand, ksherin, those are kosher. So this seems to be Rabbi Shimon's opinion, because he says it doesn't need a utensil. And it seems that it says that it doesn't matter, right hand, left hand. So therefore, Tiyufta to Rabbi Yehuda, Brei Rabbi Chia, this refutes Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, who said that if you bring it by hand, it's got to be in your right hand. If you bring it in the utensil, then you could do it left hand. But this says hand, no hand, whatever you want, left hand, right hand, doesn't make any difference. Now, this, just a note, because we're going to end the section on this note, this seems to really support Rabbi Yanai, right? Rabbi Yanai's position was you don't need to worry about anything, just put it on. Once you've done the kmitza, you can put it on any way that you want. So Rabbi Yanai is going to like this brisa, but we don't necessarily hold it as a proof, except that it's a proof against Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Chia. So, Amar Lach Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, says you have to. This brisa is indeed a little bit tricky. You have to rewrite the words a little bit. Let's dod and katani. You have to say that the different parts of the brisa are talking about different cases. You have to read it like this. Put a comma in there. Biyad, if you do it with your right hand, not bein biyad bein bekli like the brisa currently says. Biyad, if you do it with your hand, so that ben yamin, then it has to be in your right hand. Then continue on. Bakli, if you do it with the utensil, then continue the brisa bein biyad yamin, bein biyad small. You can use your right hand or your left hand. It doesn't matter once you're using a utensil. That's how Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Chia has to change that brisa. Tashma, let's try another one. This one is going to try to prove against Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says you have to do the kmitza into a utensil. Once you've done a utensil, then Rabbi Shimon says you can take it out of the utensil, you can throw it on, but you've got to put it in a utensil first. This brisa says, kmatzo mikli shores, you did the kmitza from the utensil where the mincha was, v'kidsho shelo b'kli shores. And then you sanctified it not in a utensil. After you did kmitza, you then the kitchob is on the first part, right? You sanctify the mincha, then shelo b'chli shares, then you put it into a non-sanctified utensil. Hello, then you brought it up to the mizbeach, vehiktiro shelo b'chli shares, and you burn it, not with a kli shares, puzzle, that is puzzle. Then Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon machshirin, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon say that's kosher. Right? B'matan kli, you can put it in any utensil. It doesn't have to be a kli sharis, it doesn't have to be a special utensil, which is not what Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says it's fine as long as you put it in a special utensil first, but this opinion is suggesting that you don't need to put it in any special utensil first. So Ema, no, let's say that what they're saying here is mimatan kli ve'elech. They mean to say that first you put it in utensil. Then the Brisa picks off after that step. It's not doesn't sound like the Brisa is saying it, but the Brisa is skipping a step, right? You scoop it out, the Brisa says you scoop it out, and then you can bring it up any way you want, means scoop it up, put it into another utensil. Then, after you've done that, you can then bring it any way you want, and it's kosher. That's what, and that doesn't work, that would be what Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says. Okay, Tashma will try again, another one. V'chachamim omrim, this Brisa says, the Chachamim say, kometz ta'on kli sharetz, that the kmitza requires you to throw it into a service utensil. Ketzad, how does it work? Komtzo kli shares, mi kli shares. You take a kmitza from the mincha which was in a service utensil, o mikadsho bikli shares, and then you sanctify it by putting it into a second kli shares. Umalo umaktiro bikli shares. Then you take that kli shares and you bring it up to the mizbeach and you burn it from that kli shares. That's what the Chum say. Rabbi Shimon says, no, kevan shikmatzo mi kli shares. Once you did the kmitza from the first kli shares, ma'alo umaktiro shelo b'kli shares v'dayo. Then you can bring it up and you can burn it. You don't need a second kli shares. So that seems to, again, work against this Rabbi Nachman bar Yitzchak, who seems to say that you do need to put it in a second kli shares. So Ema, so we would have to say, kevan shikmatzo v'kitsho b'kli shares. What this Brisa means to say again is we're going to readjust it again. What it means is that you've done the kmitza, you've put it in the kli shares. The Chachamim say then you need to take that kli shares up and burn it there. Rabbi Nachman bar Yitzchak says that I could take it out of that kli shares and bring it up. I don't need to bring it in that kli shares, right? Be kli shares malo maktiro v'dayo kevan shekmatzo v'kicho kli shares. Once you've already done the kmitza and put it into the second kli shares, malo maktiro v'dayo, you can take it out and you can bring it up. You don't need the kli shares after that. The kli shares is just as the initial stage. Okay, we'll try again. Toshma, come and listen. Kamat biyamino, if you did the kmitza with your right hand. Nasan bismolo, then you put it into your left hand. Okay? Transfer, right? Mm-hmm. Yachzir liyamino, all you gotta do is put it back in your right hand, right? Because that doesn't seem to be an invalidation, right? So that sounds like Rabbi Yehuda, Brei Rabbi Chia, right? Because if you did the service with your right hand, you gotta keep it in your right. If you did the service by hand, it's got to be in your right hand. So if you put it in your left hand, put it back in your right hand. Right? That's what it seems to be. Right?
It doesn't even sound possible to do that. Right?
I know. Right? It does seem like it is. Yeah. It is difficult. Right? To be able to transfer. Seems to be difficult. Well, I suppose the question is, what's difficult? Right? Is it difficult because you have to break off pieces with your pinky, which is not a very strong finger, or is it difficult because
depend on what the kmitza is in the circumstance?
Yeah.
I guess. But if it's like just flat.
This is. Either way, I sort of think this is semi-theoretical, I guess. Once you put it into your left hand, so you can't do the service with it seems like you can't do the service with your left hand, right? You got to put it back in your right hand. Bismolo, right? So then, Bismolo, now, let's say while it was in his left hand, he has a thought that he wants to burn it outside of the right time or place. Now he's got his pigul intention while he's holding it in his left hand. It's puzzle, it's ruined, right? Ve'in bokaris, but it is not pigul because it's in your left hand. So therefore, we know that the rule by pigul is that it has to be a thought during the normal service, right? This isn't a normal service because it's in your left hand at the time, not your right hand, okay? So therefore, now, biyamino, on the other hand, if he has this intent while it's in his right hand, then puzzle, then if he has in mind chutz l'mikomo outside the right place, then we know it's puzzle ve'in bokaris, and then we know that's not pigul. That we said is puzzle. However, chutz l'zmano, if he has in mind outside the right time, then it is pigul ve'chayav and alav karis, and you're chayav karis. Okay, so that's good. So it follows our rules. If it's an illegal service, it's not going to be pigul. If it is an illegal, if it's it needs to be the right. If it's a legal service, it still needs to be the right intent outside the right time. That's what Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon hold. The Chacham say, Kevan shenasano lismol. Once you put it in your left hand, psalto matnaso. You have now ruined the korban altogether. Why? Because it's, as we're going to see, my taima. The Gemara wants to know what is the reason why the Chachamim hold that it's ruined. You put it into your left hand. Why not just put it back in your right hand? What's the problem? Mishum deboy kedusha bekli. Because you have to put it in a utensil, right? So scooping it in your hand isn't the end of the service. Putting it into your left hand, what are you doing? If you put it in your left hand, you didn't put it where it's supposed to go, the utensil. And what's that like? If it came in shenasol is small, once you put it in your left hand, naseh kedam shenishbach mitzavar behema al ritzbah. Remember the case where we did the slaughtering of the animal and the blood came and fell on the floor. Then I can't scoop that blood up and put it back in the utensil because it already went on the floor. So once the blood goes where it's not supposed to go, you can't then put it back in the utensil. So here too, you scooped it with your left hand, with your right hand. Once you put it in your left hand, that's not where it's supposed to go. Once you put it where it's not supposed to go, you've invalidated it. You can't put it back in your right hand. It's no good. That is the Chachamim's position. Okay, Miklal. So that means to say, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, lo boi matan kli. Now, Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar, who tell you put it back in your right hand, seem to say you don't need to put it in a utensil. Right? That's the point, because if you need to put it in a utensil, it would invalidate it. So tiyufta de Rav Nachman tiyufta. So that's going to refute Rav Nachman, because Rav Nachman or Yitzchak said, you've got to scoop it, you got to put it in a utensil, then you could do whatever you want with it. But here it seems clear that if you needed to put it in a utensil, and you put it in your left hand instead, then it would be puzzle. Okay, so that is fair. This brisa does not go according to Rav Nachman. Okay, but we have two other opinions, right? What about we have Rav Chi, wouldn't be a Rabbi Yanai says you can put it anywhere, right? So now let's say it is Rabbi Yehuda braid Rabbi Chia misayele. This brisa really does support the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda braid Rabbi Chia. Why? Because he says if you scoop it with your hand, you've got to do it with your right hand. If you put it in utensil, you can do it with your left hand. So then, if you're scooping with your right hand, put it in your left hand, why do you have to put it back in your right hand? The answer is must be because it's done with your hand. You got to keep it in your right hand. It's not a service if it's not done in your right hand. So the question is, Rabbi Yanai limit tahavi tiyuvta. So why is it that it isn't a refutation of Rabbi Yanai as well? Because once you scoop it up in your right hand, according to Rabbi Yanai, put it in your left hand, it doesn't make a difference. You can do anything you want. You put it in your belt. You can burn it however you want. It doesn't need to be anywhere. So why, if you put it in your left hand, you have to bring it back to your right hand? So Amar Lach Rabbi Yanai, so Rabbi Yanai will answer you, Ana de Amre Ketana de Hector. I like that brisa that we learned before. Remember, we had that brisa that Rabbi Yehuda Bar Chia had to rewrite because it wasn't, that brisa that said you can bring it with your left hand, with your right hand, it doesn't make any difference. That's the brisa I like. This brisa would have to argue with that brisa. But there's clearly a dispute as to what Rabbi Shimon's opinion is, according to Rabbi Yanai. And he says, okay, so I like that other brisa. Right? Velav litzdodin ketani. I disagree with how Rabbi Yehuda Breder Rabbi Chia tried to relearn it and rewrite it. I like the way it was originally written. That's how I hold. And therefore, this brisa might be a question against me, but I like that brisa instead. So that's how those two stay in the line. Got a couple of brises. Okay. Hikter kumtza pa'amayim kshir. The last line of the Mishnah was, if you take the kamitza and you do it in two steps, so then the kamitza is kosher. It's okay. So Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, we have to learn from there that pa'amayim, that it means that you could do it in two steps, velo pa'amei pa'amayim, but not more than that. You can't do it times, right? Meaning like 3 times or 4 times. Now, Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi's interpretation. He says, pa'amayim, va'afilu pa'amei pa'amayim, you could do it in, it doesn't matter. The Mishnah is not being precise and saying you can only split it in half. The Mishnah is saying you could do it in stages. My beinayu, what is the point of argument between the two? What difference does it make whether you do it in 2 steps or in 4 steps? Amar Rabbi Zer says, Yesh komitz pachos mishnei zeisim. So the question is, can you do a kamitza? When you do a kamitza, can you have less than 2 olive sizes in your hand? That's the question. And v'yesh haktara pechusa mikazayis. And then when you burn, is burning satisfactory if you burn less than a kazayis at a time? Okay, that's the issue. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi holds, ein kamotz pachos mishnei zeisim. You can't have a kamitza that's less than 2 olive sizes. That's the required size. Vein aktara pechusa kazayas. And you need to have a kazayas of each burning. Therefore, if you have in your hand 2.2 kazasim, then you burn one kazayas. So then if you burn less then how are you going to have 3? You can't keep splitting it up because at some point you're going to have less than a kazayas. So therefore, since every burning only counts if you have more than you have a kazayas, so therefore you need to burn it in 2 and no more, because your hand doesn't hold 3 kazasim or 4 kazasim. So therefore, you have to burn at least a kazayas. Rabbi Yochanan Savar, Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. Yesh kometz pachos mishnei zaysim. He says that the kmitza can be less than 2 olives. Ve'yeshak tara pechusa mi kazayas, and you can also burn it less than 2 kazasim. If I'm not mistaken, so according to Rabbi Shiur, the issue here is that those that measured, right? Who is it? They bring it here. The kilo, is it the Kilos Yaakov? I can't remember who it is. The Grizz? No, I'm not sure exactly who it is. But in any event, the problem is that if you take a measurement in modern times, our hands don't hold 2 kazasim. Now, there is a question about what's the size of kazayas, which is about 2/3 of an egg's volume, and the eggs have changed sizes over time, so potentially they were. But no, even if you go with our modern egg sizes, still your fist doesn't hold that much. So therefore, he concludes, and I can't remember who was. Unfortunately, I should have underlined it. He concludes that the hands of the Kohanim back then were larger, and that creates a problem. So when the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt, so now we have, what are we supposed to do? Right? So the answer is, don't worry about it. There are probably Kohanim who have larger hands, and those will, well, no, the other way around, right? You would want to be able to, no, I don't, I'm saying, but it's not Baruch Hashem, right? Because I'm Baruch Hashem for everything, but it's bad news, right?
Yes.
If I was one of the Kohanim, I didn't test, but if I was one of the Kohanim who had extra large, unusual sized hands, then I could be the one who was doing the Kmitza from Menachos. So it seems like, now the problem is that there is a shita that says that if a Kohen can't do a Kmitza, then he should be puzzled for all avodos. In which circumstance that means that the number of Kohanim that are eligible for any service is very, very limited. And we'll have to find out when Mashiach comes. And he says, don't worry about it. When Mashiach comes, don't worry. Hashem will have a way, right? He figured it out last time when there was a Beis Hamikdash. He'll figure it out again in the future times. Just pointing out that if you do a measurement at home, and you start to see that your hand doesn't fit that much, don't be surprised. That's true. That is true. Your hand does not fit that much.
Are the other shitas of what a kazayas is?
Even the smallest one doesn't work. Right? Even the smallest one is where our hands are too small. Yeah. Itmar. It has been said, Kometz me'emasai matisher bachila. At what point, you've taken the kmitza, we know that burning the kmitza allows you to eat the rest of the offering. At what point is the time when, bam, now you're allowed to eat it, right? What point? So Rabbi Chanina Omer Misha Mishola Bo Es Ha'or, from the time that the fire has burned the kmitza, then the Kohanim can eat it. And Rabbi Yochanan Amar Misha Totzis Bo Ha'or Berubo, once most of it is burnt, right? Right. So I think the first one is less, right? As soon as the fire catches onto it, and the second one is once most of it is burnt. So Amar le Yehuda le Rabbi bar Rav Yitzchak. So Rabbi Yehuda says to Rabbi bar Rav Yitzchak, Asbara loch, time of Rabbi Yochanan. I'll tell you Rabbi Yochanan's logic. Amar Kra, the pasuk says about the destruction of Sodom. V'hinei Allah kitor haaretz kekitor hakivshon. The burning of the land was like the burning of the furnace. Kivshon ma'lekitor ad shetotzis ha'or berubo. And we know that furnaces don't start emitting smoke until most of the wood is caught fire. So therefore, we know that the word hector or kitor, which means to burned, is related to the raising of smoke. And therefore, it must be when it's mostly caught and consumed, not at the very beginning. So therefore, that supports Rabbi Yochanan's shita. He's explaining what haktara means. Haktara must mean that it's already smoking, it's already mostly burnt. Amri Rabin bar Rav Ada l'Rava. So Rabin bar Rav Ada says to Rabbi, Amri Talmidach Amar Rav Amram, that your students say in the name of Rav Amram, Tanya, we learn in a brisa. Ainli Ella dvarim shedarkon likarev balayla. This pasuk, the pasuk by the Ola, says Zos Torah Sa'ola. This is the rule of the Ola. Hi ha'ola al mokda al mizbech kol alayla. This is the Ola which is on the pyre which is on the Mizbeach all night until Adaboker to the morning, the Eisha Mizbeach tu kadbo, and the fire of the Mizbeach should be on it. So the Brisa says that we're going to learn from this that what is the halacha for things that are supposed to be brought during the day if you don't bring them during the day. So you see from this pasuk that dvarim shedarkam likarev balayla, the things that are supposed to be burnt at night, could go in evarim upedarim, the limbs of the korban ola, the fats of all korbanos, shemalan umaktiran, that you bring them up on the mizbeach mi bo hashemesh from sunset, umis aklin v'hochlin kol alayla kula, they go and they stay burning all night long. Right? Once you bring them past sunset, they stay up there and they burn. Dvarim shedarkan likarev bayom, things that you're supposed to burn during the day. For example, kigon hakometz, the kmitza of the mincha, v'halavona, the frankincense, v'haktoris, the incense, uminchas kohanim, the mincha of a kohen, which the entire thing is burned, uminchas kohen Mashiach, and the mincha of the kohen gadol, which is supposed to be completely burnt, uminchas nisachim, and the mincha that comes with the korbanos, shemalon umaktiron mi bo hashemesh. You're supposed to bring them up and burn them from the setting of the sun. Now, first question, you just said that they're supposed to be burned during the day. What do you mean that you're supposed to bring them from the sunsets? That's after it's day. Ella imbo hashemesh. What we mean to say is you can burn them as the sun is setting. Right at the end of sunset, right when sunset is happening, you can still burn them.
How's it getting dark at that time?
Even though it's starting, it's about to get dark. You could still bring your korban right there. You might say, oh no, there's not enough time for it to burn completely. So how could that be? Misaklin v'hochlin kol layla, and then they can continue to burn all night. You just have to put them on the fire while it's still daytime. You don't have to, right? You don't have to get it burned finishly. Talmud Lomar, therefore the pasuk says, Minayin, how do I know that? Because the Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, Zos Toras ha'ola, this is the rule of the Ola, Riba. That tells me that this is the rule that as long as the rule of the Ola is, as long as I have part of the Ola that gets consumed during the day, it can continue to burn all night long, right? Again, the Zos Torah Ola is telling me that just as something is acceptable by an Ola, all of it is acceptable. So it's the same idea. As long as you get some of it burnt before during the day, then the entire thing is fine. Now, Veha imbo hashemesh lo mishkachas lo shetatzor berubo. Problem is a question on Rabbi Yochanan. If you need to have most of it burnt, according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's impossible that if you put it a second before Shkia, that you're going to get most of it burnt. So lo kasha, that's not a contradiction. Kan liklot, kan lahatir. There's a difference between the making the offering acceptable for being burned and when is it acceptable for you to eat the rest. Rabbi Yochanan says you need most of it to be burnt in order to eat the rest of the mincha. But he doesn't say it's invalid. So therefore, if you put it on the fire and it starts being burned, then it's valid. You still have to wait until after Shkia, a few minutes until it burns up, then you can eat the rest of the shirayim. Those are two different, that has to be how Rabbi Yochanan is holding. Rabbi Elazar Masni law, so Rabbi Elazar says, no, I'm going to change the text of the brisa slightly. Mi bo hashemesh umokin la bepokin. He says that the brisa says, no, it's from the time the sun sets, right? That's what the brisa says. And so I'm talking about the parts of the offering that pop out, right? He says, those things that the kmitza and the levona, that if they fall out of the fire after they've been put in, you can still put them back in. So therefore, that doesn't mean that you still have to burn, you still have to put it back, you still have to put it in earlier in order to get it burnt like Rabbi Yochanan says. What this brisa is saying is, even though there are things that are supposed to be burned during the day, if they fall out of the fire, you can put them back in at night. That's what the brisa is saying. Okay.
One question. Yeah, when it comes to korbanos, right? Some of them are oils and some of the korbanos, some of the leftovers you can eat. How does that work? If the fire's hot, how do you get the meat out?
So the meat, no, you don't put, for the korbanos that you're supposed to eat, you don't burn that meat, right? You only burn the fats, the kidneys and the diaphragm. You throw the blood, the rest of the meat stays out, right? The skin goes to the kohen. The burning, only the ola, the entire thing goes on the fire. All of these other korbanos, the whole rest of the section of the animal does not. V'chein ki azer Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yanai. So too, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he said in the name of Rabbi Yanai, who lived in Eretz Yisrael, Bipokin. That's what this brisa is talking about. This brisa is telling you that once the sun sets, you might think, well, I can't. What popped out of the fire? It's during the day. I'm only supposed to put it on the fire during the day. He says, no. If it pops out at night, you can put it back in as well. But does Rabbi Yanai really say that? V'har Rabbi Yanai, don't we have a quote from Rabbi Yanai that says, Ktores shepaka me'al gab mizbeach? If the Ktores comes out of the fire, right, which is on the inner fire. Remember, the Ktores is not burned on the main Mizbeach, it's burned on the inner Mizbeach. Afilu krotin sheba, even if you've got regular chunks, pieces that are not burnt, right, that come out, ein machzir noson, you don't put them back on. V'tani Rabbi Chanina bar Manyomi b'debei Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, and we learned that Rabbi Chanina bar Manyomi said in the yeshiva of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, that, where does that come from? The pasuk says, Asher tochal eish es ha'olah al ha'mizbeach. That which the fire consumes on the ola, on the mizbeach. Ikule ola atamachzir. That tells you that you're supposed to burn anything that is part of an ola. That puts back, you put that back on the mizbeach. Via tamachzir ikule ketoras. You don't put back on incense. So therefore, we see Rabbi Yanai doesn't allow you to put incense back on. So the answer is samei mikan ketoras. You're right. The word ketoras, take out of the brisa. You got to take, if you're going to say that it's according to Rabbi Yanai's opinion, you got to take the word ketoras out of the brisa. And so you still have to edit the words of the brisa in any event in order to make this work. Okay, I'm a Ravasi. So Ravasi says, Ki poshit Rabbi Elazar b'Menachos boyhachi. When Rabbi Elazar was learning Meseches Menachos, right? He sat down, learned Meseches Menachos. He asked the following question that nobody could answer, right? He asked, Kometz shesidro v'sidro olav esamaracha mahu. Let's say you have the fire and then you put the mincha on top of it. Let's say you did it reverse. You put the mincha and then you put the wood on top of that. What would be the halacha if you did it in that order? Derech haktara bekach, that's still burning it. Oh, ain't derech haktara bekach, or that's not how you burn things. You put the fire down first and then you put things on top, right? That since the pasuk says haktarem, where that's the connection here. Since the Rabbi Yochanan source is this is how things are burnt. That's why you know that it needs to be burnt. So is this how it's burnt or it's not? So teku. So we left that as we're not sure.
Okay, then what comes with fires, right?
Sorry?
If you see a fire burning, just burning down, you add more wood and to let it, and you give enough space for it to let it.
That is the ideal way for fires to go, right? Put the wood down first. Boy Chizkiah. So Chizkiah asked a fine question. A vorin, if I've got the other way, let's talk about korbanos in zvachim for a moment, since we never asked the same question. So he asked the question, same idea. A vorin shesidron, if I have the limbs and I ordered them in order to burn them, v'sider alehem es hamaracha, and then I put the fire on top of that mahu. What will be the halacha of that? Al ha'etzim, the pasuk says that you put the limbs on the wood. Amar Rachman, that's what the Torah says. Dafka al ha'etzim, and it means it's literally got to be on the wood. Al dilma kev dechsiv kro achrina, since another pasuk says asher tochal eish es ha'olah al mizbeach, the fire is going to consume that which is brought up on the mizbeach. So it means iboy hachi of it, iboy hachi of it. It doesn't matter as long as it's burnt. Burning is the most critical part. As long as it's burnt, you're fine. So teku. So I'm not sure about that either. So don't do it that way.
Leave it as is.
Yeah, so what would happen if you have these circumstances? So you'd wind up saying that the person who had the offering, you have to presume the offering is valid. He can't bring a replacement, and he also can't eat in the mincha. He can't eat the leftovers because we don't know if it was valid, right? That wouldn't be a problem with a animal sacrifice, right? Because the animal sacrifice, the burning of the limbs on the mizbeach, don't affect whether you consume the rest of the meat. Although the burning limbs is probably an ola, in which case you're burning everything anyway. So, Boi Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha asks the following question: A vorim shesidron betzidei maracha. Let's say you don't put the limbs on the fire, you put it next to the fire. Again, it says the pasuk says it has to be on the fire. Aliba demandamar al mamish. According to the opinion, it says it has to be on loti boilach. There's no question. That's not okay. Dal eitzim, because if it says it's got to be put on the wood, you put it next to the wood. It's going to catch fire. It's going to burn, but that's not going to be acceptable. Kiti boilach aliba demanda amar al besamach. According to the opinion that says the word al means nearby, what would be the halacha here? What's the halacha here? So hakanami. Al besamach. Do we say that here's also, that's the intention of the word al means nearby? Odilma al ha'etzim dum yadal mizbeach. When we say on the wood, there's a context here. The Mishnah says you put it on the wood, which is on the mizbeach. On the mizbeach doesn't mean next to the mizbeach. It means on the mizbeach. So therefore, ma hasam al mamish, just like on means on the mizbeach, af hachanami, also hear about the wood. It has to be al mamish, has to be on the wood. Teku. You don't know that answer either, right? That's like the summary last questions of the those issues. So you're sort of getting towards the next topic when they're like, here's some other random summary questions that nobody had the answers to. Here's the three unusual circumstances. Nobody had really an answer to this question.
It may not be best practices.
Okay.
Followed.
Here we go. Says the next Mishnah. Hakometz miuto me'akev es rubo. If you do the kmitza, if you lose part of it, then it ruins the whole thing. These are going to be a list of circumstances where part of something being missing ruins the entire thing. So if I lose part of the kmitza, the entire kmitza is gone. Isaron, the flour, I've got to bring an isaron of flour. Miuto mi'akev es rubo. If I don't bring part of the flour, then the whole korban is missing. Right? I've got to bring the whole isaron. Hayayin, when I'm bringing wine, miuto me'akev es rubo. If I don't bring the entire amount of revias hahin, the quarter hin, then it's gone, no good. Hashem and oil, miuto me'akev es rubo. A little bit ruins the whole thing. Hasoles vehashemen me'akvin zazeh. If I don't have oil and if I don't have the oil and the flour, then everything is missing. Of course, I mean, did we say that if I'm missing the flour, so then the flour is gone, so then that's no good, so then why would I think that if I miss all the flour? The answer is I might have presumed that if I bring less than the amount of flour that I need, the flour is ruined, therefore the korban is no good. But if I leave out the flour completely, then at least I have a korban of oil, right? No, will not work that way. If I miss one of the ingredients, then the rest of the korban is ruined. So, if you have the kmitza and the frankincense, I need to have both. I lose one, so then if I didn't burn the levona or the frankincense, I didn't burn the kmitza, then it's like I didn't burn anything. Okay, so now this next Gemara is let's bring the psukim. Here's our rules again. Anytime we're going to have certain words that are going to imply that it means that these things are required, the entire thing is required. Words like chok, words like yiyeh, tihiyeh, right? Havaya is what we call it, right? As long as there's a word in the pasuk that says it must be, it shall be. Kain ta'asu, so it shall be done, right? If it's written twice, right? Those are all indicators that the amount that's listed in the pasuk is not just a mitzvah, but it's required. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through each one of these that are in the Mishnah and say which word in the pasuk tells me it's required. So it should be quick. My taima, what's the reason? Let's start with the first one. My taima that you need the whole kmitza, because amar kra, melo kumtzo, trei zimni. We have the word melo kumtzo twice, right? Once by the minchas nedava, once by the mincha that's a gift, once by the minchas chotei, the mincha that's a sin offering. It says he has to take melo kumtzo, his entire kmitza. That means an entire kmitza is required. Isaron, you need an isaron of flour. Miuto ma'akev es rubo, less, a little bit of it holds up the whole thing. My time, where's the pasuk say that? Amar kra, the pasuk says, misalta. By the minchas nedava, it says, from its solas, right? It could say, misolas. You take some of the solas. It says, no, from its solas, meaning she'im chasra, kolshu, that extra hay tells me that if I miss any of the solas, so then psula, the whole korban is no good. Hayayin, the oil. So miuto me'akev es rubo. Some of it ruins the whole thing because the pasuk says
this is hayayin. Yayin is wine.
Yayin is wine. That's correct. So you need wine for the nesachim that goes with the korban. So kacha. It says kacha yasel l'shorecha. This is how you shall do for one of the oxen. So it says kacha like this. So that's again another word that implies that it must be like so. Hashemen, the oil. Miuto me'akev es rubo, a little bit holds up the whole thing. Where do we know that? De minchas nesachim, because it says by the section of the minchas nesachim, by each korban, kacha. It says kacha. And then minchas nedava, by a donated offering, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, u'mishamna, from its oil. So we have it in places that applies to each of the korbans, right? And, right? She'im chasar kolshu psula. If you are missing either in those circumstances, so then it's puzzle. Now I need a pasuk in all the other ones. One time it was enough, right? Here it has to tell me I have to check on each of those two korbanos because I might have thought that since the amount of oil is different between when I donate a korban, a lug, and when I bring for minchas nesachim, it depends on the size of the animal. I might have thought that the rule of oil is different, right? I might say I have to bring 2 lug of oil for this animal, as long as I have one lug, it's sufficient. right? No, the answer is the amount that's required for the Nesachim is required, and the amount that is required for a donated offering is required. It doesn't matter. So that's why we have to list 2 psukim by the oil, because the amount of oil changes. Hashemen v'hasos makvin zeh. How do I know oil and flour are required? They prevent each other, because it says misalta umishamna, from its flour and from its oil, the extra, and then it says again migirsa umishamna, from its fine flour and from its oil. Listed twice. So therefore we know that flour and oil prevent each other. If you're missing one of the 2 ingredients, the other is not acceptable. Hakomitz va'avona me'akvin zeh. The kemitza and the frankincense are going to hold up each other. Al kol levona sak, because the pasuk says on its levona, again the extra hay. No, I'm sorry, it's not from the extra hay. It's from the fact that it's listed twice. Ves kol levona asher al mincha, and all levona. So it says it twice, so you need the levona is required. Do we have a blue chumash? Thank you, Yehuda. That blue chumash is going to be good, because we need a diagram.
Not too far.
Yes. Perfect. Shnei se'ira yom kippur. Now we're talking about things that prevent one or the other. So basically, some mitzvahs are just all or nothing. You got to do the whole thing. You can't do part of them. Shnei se'ira yom kippurim. The 2 goats on Yom Kippur, right? One is la Hashem, one is la Azazel, ma'akvin zeh. Can't, if one dies, you can't do the other one. Shnei kivsei ateres, the 2 sheep of the Shavuos offering that we've been discussing. So ma'akvin zeh, you need both of them. Shnei chalos, the 2 loaves of bread that come with them, ma'akvos zuazu, they are required. Shnei sedorim, the 2 stacks of the lechem aponim, so makvin zeh, they are required. Shnei bazichim, the 2 spoonfuls of frankincense, makvin zeh, those are required. They hold, if you're missing one, you can't bring the other. Hasedarim bazichim makvin zeh, also that the loaves, if you don't have the loaves, you can't burn the frankincense, and the other way around, right? Bazichim makvin zeh, right? You can't, if you don't have the frankincense, you can't eat the loaves. Shnei minim shebenazir, there's 2 types of loaves of bread by a nazir. Right, you have to bring 2 types of loaves. Those they're chalos matzos and they're rakike matzos. They're the thicker matzos, and then they're wafers. You need both of them. If you don't have one of those 2, then the korban is no good.
The one we use on pizza, those are the thicker matzos. Right?
Yeah, but they're not the same as the nazir matzos, right? That's not because they add oil and those sorts of things. You don't put that into your matzah that we have, right? They're just matzos in the sense that they are baked within 18 minutes. Shlosha sheba para, the 3 types by the paraduma, 3 things that you are required by the paraduma. That is the cedar branch, the hyssop branch, and the crimson thread. So those things are required. You need all of those. Arba'a shebatoda, the 4 loaves of bread, 4 types of loaves, which is the chalos matzos, the rikike matzos, the wafers, the soles morkeves, those are the fine flour, and the chalos that are chametz. All 4 of those you need to be required. And arba'a shebalulav, 4 things, the 4 species of lulav. You're missing.
That's in my Rabbi, and what's the 4th one?
And lulav. Oh. Right? It's always the easy one to forget, right? Yeah. Lulav, hadasim, aravos, and esrog. Right. If you're missing any of them, then may as well don't say, well, I got 3 out of 4, right? I'm good? No. You don't have to walk around, shake your esrog if you've got it, right? Arba sheba mitzora, there are 4 things you need by the mitzora. They're also makvin zeh, the cedar branch, the hyssop branch, the crimson thread, and the birds that come with the mitzora. All of those things are required. Otherwise, it's not good. Sheva hazos sheba para, the 7 sprinklings of the par aduma, which you have to sprinkle the blood towards the ohel mohed, makvos uasu, those are required. Sheva hazayos she'al bein habadim, the 7 sprinklings which go between the poles of the aron, she'al parochas, and also towards the curtain, which is between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKodashim, Shal Mizbeach HaZahav, and also the application of the blood onto the gold Mizbeach, which are done by the 2 Yom Kippur offerings and done by the Par Helam Davar, which is when the one that we have when the community based in makes a mistake and people follow it, and also the one where the Kohen Gadol makes a mistake.
Is that where we get the broken to cover the orange from?
That is where we get. That's why we call it the Parochas. It is the curtain that separates between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKodashim. Okay, so probably not going to realize that we have to do the lulav sugya before we do the menorah sugya. But hopefully tomorrow I'm going to bring all the menorah stuff. I got some pictures. Cool. We'll try to bring pictures. I'm going to remember.
items.
I don't have a prop. I'm gonna have lots of good pictures. Though. This one I'm gonna have some pictures of.
Cool.
Shnei seira Yom Kippur makvin zeh. So now again, we've got to bring the proof that these two things are required. Why are the two goats of Yom Kippur? Because it says chukah. Everything by Yom Kippur is required. Why? Because at the end of the Yom Kippur service, it says the word chukah. Right? That it says that v'haisa zos lahem lechukas olam. This service of Yom Kippur is a law to you, and chok means it is engraved. Right? No changes. Shnei kivsei atzeres makvin zeh. You need the two sheep of Yom Kippur. Why? Because it says havaya. It says the word tiyeh. Al shnei kivasim kodesh yiyu la Hashem. These two sheep shall be for Hashem. Yiyu. So it says the word havaya by yiyu. That means that they are required. Shtei chalos, the two loaves of bread. Again, havaya. It says the word tiyeh, because the pasuk says, "Taviu lechem tenufa." You shall bring waved bread, shtayim, two loaves, shnei esronim, made of two esronim. So is the fine flour. Tihiyena, they shall be. You have to have them. Tiyena. Shnei sedarim, the two stacks of the lechem upon him. Again, the word chukah is written there. This pasuk says, "V'haisa la'aron levanav chok olam." It will be for you and for Aaron for an eternal law. Shnei bazikim chukah. Shnei bazikim, same thing. By the lechem upon him, it says the word chok, as we just said. Hasidor ba'bazichen. Then why do you need both the loaves and the frankincense? Again, he said chukah by lechem upon him, the word chok. Shnei minim sheben nazir. How do I know the two different types of bread by the nazir are required? Dichsiv, because the pasuk says by the nazir, kain yaaseh al toras nizro. This is how it shall be by the nazir. Shlosha sheba para. How about the three sprinklings of the paraduma? Because by the paraduma it says chukah. It says zos chukas Torah. This is the chok, right? And that's where Rashi says chukas. A chok means you don't have an answer to it, but it's also to tell me that all of the rules are required. You cannot leave anything out. Arba sheba toda. The 4 loaves of bread are required. Why? Iskish l'nazir, because we know that the toda and the nazir sacrifices are compared to each other. We're going to learn later on that the main main reason why the nazir and the korban toda loaves are connected to each other is in order to tell us the size of how much wheat and how much flour is supposed to go into the nazir's offerings. But it also is as far as other laws as well. And this one is to tell me that just as the nazir, where it says Kenya said, so it has to be, so too, the toda, it also must be. Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, al zevach toda shlamav. This is the korban of the toda. It's shlamim offerings with a yud in there, which means multiple. V'amarmar shlamav l'rabos shamei tzidbar. The word shlamav tells me that this pasuk of the toda applies to both the toda and the nazir. So therefore, we know that just as the korban by the nazir, all the loaves are required, so too the korban toda, all of them are required. V'arba'a sheba mitzorah, the 4 by the mitzorah, dichsiv, it says, zos toras ha-mitzorah, this is the rule of the mitzorah. So it says that the mitzorah you can't leave out, and of course the one we sort of skipped came back to, v'arba'a sheba lulav. How come all of the lulav you need all 4 of them? Because the pasuk says, ulekachtam, you shall take them, but also we explain the pasuk lekachtam is a contraction of words lekicha tama. It means to be a complete taking with everything in it. Right? It's not just usually we would say lakach osam is how we would say the words, right? Take them, but you could just write the word lekachtam is also lekicha tama, a complete taking. Okay, so that's the drasha. Therefore, you need all 4 of them. Amar Rav Chanan bar Rava. Rav Chanan bar Rava says lo shanu ela she'ein lo. Aval yeshlo ein ma'akvin. He says this rule of the 4 species being taken together, he says that is only if you don't have all 4 species, right? If you don't have all 4 species, then don't bother taking them. However, once you have all 4 species, so then you can pick them up. You don't actually have to tie them together. You don't actually have to mush them all together. Meisvei. So Brisa says, not like that though. Brisa says, Arba minin shebelulav, the 4 species that come with the lulav, shnai mein osim peros, you should know, 2 of them make fruit, right? The date palm, right? That's the lulav. And also the esrog itself is a fruit-bearing tree. And ushnai mehem ein osim peros. The hadas and aravos, they don't make any fruit, right? Ha'osim peros, you use zikukin l'she'ein osim peros. The ones that make fruit need the ones that don't make fruit. Why? And she'enos and peros, the ones that don't make fruit, use a kukin laos and peros. They need the ones that do make fruit. So, what is that teaching us? Ve'ein odom yotze yodei chavason behan ad sheyu kulon baguda achas. You can't fulfill your mitzvah of lulav and esrog until you've got them all, and it says baguda achas, in one bundle. Sounds like you have to tie them up together. V'chein Yisrael Bartzah. That is the way that it is when the Jewish people come to daven, right? They have to daven in a time of fasting. You need to get everybody together. They're not answered achu kulon baguda achas until all of the Jews are bundled together. Shenamar, the pasuk says, Habone bashamayim ma'alosov v'agudaso al eretz yisada. Hashem builds in the heavens his ma'alosov, I guess his heights or his steps, and his bundle is the foundation on which it is all built, his bundle of Am Yisrael. So, lest some people have the position and the idea that every Jew has to be separated and this people have to go to this place where everybody is big tzaddik just like me, and I only go places where everybody's a big tzaddik, and I can't because I can't be hanging around with those people. You know how it is. So the answer is nope. That's not how Hashem answers tefillos. Hashem answers tefillos when the Jewish people say we have to all be together. And that is a statement a statement of hashkafa, very important. Gemara says
From the Gemara.
From the Gemara, right? And it's not even a Musar Sefer. So, so even if nowadays a rabbi might tell you, pick a school that is unique in that everybody is a certain type, there are some schools that also feel that everybody should be gathered together and bundled together, and that's the way to learn best. Anyway, it's a saying, maybe. I put my plug in. Since everybody here is friendly, yeah.
Can I ask a question just on the tying together, right? The
Yes.
esrog does not get.
Oh, great question. Yes. So the esrog doesn't go in, right?
Yeah.
So let's see. He brought here. He says here. He says, "Esrog enu negodim shara minim k'mavur begemara." The Gemara in Maseches Sukkah tells us the esrog doesn't get bundled in. The Shulchan Aruch kasav shetzarich lechaber esrog lulav b'shas hana anunim. But the Shulchan Aruch says you have to hold it together during the time that it's being shaken. The kasav beber agro. The Gra says shamakor lezeh hu misuk yosenu. The source, right? The Gemara in Maseches Sukkah seems to imply you only have to tie the lulav of Hadass and Ravos. We have to get to Maseches Sukkah to look that up. But the source for bringing them together, holding them together when you shake, is our sugya. Shetzrichim kulam yospek aguda achas. They all have to be together. Okay, so yeah, I can look up. I'm going to look up a little bit. Maybe we'll start because we've got 5 minutes. We'll start with next year. I'll take a look at a couple of meforshim on that. But yes, but that's why. So we have to hold them together from our sugya. But it isn't. But you don't tie the esrog in because the Maseches Sukkah. So seems like Ruchanan bar Rava says you don't have to tie them together, and it seems like this brisa says you do. So it's Tanaihi. The answer is it's a machlokas tanoim. The Tanya we learn a brisa. Lulav, when it comes to lulav, bein agud, bein she'eno agud, it doesn't matter whether it's bundled together or not. It's kosher. That's what the Chum say. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda says agud kosher v'she'eno agud pasul. That if it's bundled together, it's kosher. If it's not, it's pasul. I would imply from this, and I would have to look up the halacha, that if you shook your lulav and esrog and they were not bundled together, you should shake them again, but don't make another bracha. Right? Because it may not be okay. My time, Rabbi Yehuda. What is Rabbi Yehuda's reasoning? Gamar kicha me'agudas ezov. He says the source is a gzer shava. The gzer shava from the hyssop branches by the para aduma. Right? It says l'kachtem lachem. Sorry, not by the para aduma. By Pesach Mitzrayim. In Mitzrayim, it says that they took a bundle of hyssop, they dipped it in the blood of the Korban Pesach, and they painted their doorposts. Right. So therefore, that had to be a bundle. So therefore, since that had to be a bundle, malahol and baguda, it says take, and it says in aguda, it says that you have to take l'kachtem lochem. It says you're supposed to l'kachtem agudas ezov. You're supposed to take an aguda. So here, afkan ba'aguda. Here too, you also have to take a bundle. This is of course inyan of diyoma because Jeff spent Shabbos in Aguda, so that's why I had to. V'Rabbanan lo gamri kicha kicha. The Rabbanan say that gezer shava of kicha kicha is not in existence. Tosfos asks a puzzling question, right? Tosfos says, but we see that in other circumstances that we do by kedushin, right? That how do we know that women are able to be married through money? From kicha kicha, from the word kicha of Stei Ephron. When Abraham goes and buys maras mechpelah, he uses money, and it uses the word kicha over there and kicha by marriage. So we see that it is acceptable. And he says, well, you see the Rabbanan do use a gzer shava kicha kicha. I'm confused by that. He answers that maybe it's that he says that right, it's that the words are not extra over here. That's why they don't use gzer shava, and over there they are extra. He also says that it could be because the word kicha, kach and kach over there, and they learn it, but here it's kicha. It's not the same words, but it's a little bit still strange because usually I understand how gzer shavas work. Each gzer shava needs a tradition from a Rebbe for it to be learned. And just because this time kach and kach is a gzer shava doesn't mean every time the word kach is written it's a gzer shava, right? We certainly don't mean that you can be yotzei a lulav with money. right? Because the Gzera Shava of Kicha Kecha of Stay Ephron, it's a different Gzera Shava. So I don't know, Tzarchi to me, I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure there's answers. Kiman Ozo Hodetanya. Okay, who does it go by according to the Shita that says in this brisa, lulav mitzvah laogdo? It's a mitzvah. You don't. It's not required, but it's a good thing to do. Vim lo agdo kosher. But if you don't, it's kosher. Keman. So who's that like? Ikir Rabbi Yehuda. So if it's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, lo agdo amai kosher. If you didn't tie it, why is it kosher? Be Rabbanan, my mitzvah. And according to the Rabbanan, why is it a mitzvah? They say you don't need to do it.
The only thing that's not kosher is when the Rabbi.
There are many things that make a lulav and esrog not kosher, right? But the question is whether tying, right? If the lulav is falling apart, dried up, a ravos are there missing leaves, right? But the issue here is the question is whether you need to tie it or not. That's the issue, specific issue we're dealing with. So the question is, according to here, why do you need to tie? Who says that it's a mitzvah to tie it? Either it's required or it's not at all. So liolam rabbanan, it's the rabbis. My mitzvah mishum zek keli van vehu. They say it's a beautification. It's still a mitzvah to do it, even though you don't need to. If you shook it without it, you'd be yotzei. But it's a beautification of the mitzvah to tie it up in a nice way, nice way. Okay, then maybe we'll stop here. We'll start with we'll do the paraduma stuff next, and then. Okay.
Sheva Hazos next?
Yeah. Yep. Sheva Hazos Sheba Para we'll pick up from.
Yeah. Beautiful. Go out. Very nice. Very nice.
We're almost up to Amid B.
We are.